Carey Charleston Carlton Jr., better known as Doc, was born in Arcadia, Florida on February 6, 1917. He attended Alabama Polytechnical Institute, known today as Auburn University, graduating with a doctorate from the School of Veterinary Medicine. Directly out of college, Doc began working with the USDA in Atlanta, bangs testing cattle. Soon after, he realized he wanted to be home and moved back to Arcadia, where he started his own veterinary practice. It seemed everyone knew Doc Carlton.
He went by the drugstore down there in Fort Myers, downtown, and he was talking to the druggist and the owner. And I said, "Daddy, how do you know these people?" He said, "Well, during the war, there was no vet salesman to come around and have an opportunity to buy supplies from them. You couldn't buy alcohol, you couldn't buy cotton, you couldn't buy syringes, needles, thermometers, and things of that." And he said, "I could get them from the drugstore." And he said, "I would tell them ahead or I would write them. Tell them I'd be in their area on a certain day next week, and please have so-and-so ready for me." And they kept an extra supply for me.
In the 50s, Doc worked as a cooperator with the University of Florida, Lakeland Cash Feed, and Vitaway to research why cows were salt sick and the lack of minerals in pastures in south central Florida. He donated dozens of cattle in this research, and in 1957 they perfected a mineral supplement known today as PDQ. When Doc's father died, he was left to help his mother run the large ranch. Eventually, Carey sold his veterinary practice to help run the ranch full-time, though he loved caring for the animals and had already made a name for himself. More than a handful of vets in the area got their start because of Dr. Carey Carlton.
And the vet that finally came in there, Dr. Frank Hanley, he told me, he said, "Carey, I went around and the people were still talking about your daddy, Dr. Carlton, and all that he helped them with and everything."
Doc was a lifetime member of the First Baptist Church of Arcadia, where he taught men's Sunday school class and would sing in the church choir. He also enjoyed spending time with his children.
One time he told me, he said, "Tell them you're not going to be at school tomorrow and when you go today." And I said, "Okay." And that's what I told him. And so that next morning, he said, "Pack a suitcase and we're going to spend the night tomorrow night, or tonight in Tampa." I said, "Yes, sir." And so he and I went over that afternoon, went to the fair, and we went everywhere, all over the fair, just my daddy and I. We spent the night, and the next day we went to the car races there at the fairgrounds. And I'll always remember that, just my daddy and I.
In addition to being a well-known and respected vet and cattle rancher who had many friends, Doc had a soft spot for the less fortunate.
When I was a small child, I'd go with him down to the hospital south of Arcadia, and you couldn't go inside unless you were sick until you were 12 years old. So I sat in the big rocker chairs out front, and I didn't know why we were there. He said to visit some people. Well, after I got 12, I could go in with him. He'd go to the front desk and ask the lady, they went to school together, who she had. And she'd name them off, and he'd say, "Okay, what room?" And then he would go and talk to the people, see how they were doing, if they need anything. And after he got finished visiting 8, 10, 15 people that month, he'd go back up to the front desk. "How much was so-and-so's bill?" And she'd tell him, and he'd add them all up, those 10, 12 people he went and visited. He'd write a check and pay for it. He said, "Now when they go home, don't tell them where these funds came from. And if there's still some more charges, I'll be back next month, and I'll take those plus some more." He did that months after months, years after years, and I praise my father for that. He enjoyed the land. He just didn't. He enjoyed life, and I enjoyed being with him.
We are proud to recognize Carey Charleston Carlton Jr. as a 2013 DeSoto County AgFest legend.